your phones out and your ring lights. We about to go live. Come on your phone screen, man, we going live.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ty Brady Way today. And guess what? The featured speaker is me. I've had a lot of people ask me to go back and go through a little bit more detail on my journey. So I don't know how far I'm going to go back, but we'll see what my wonderful brain takes me today and where we'll learn. But I'm guarantee you it's going to be exciting. You're going to learn something, and you may learn something about me that you didn't know. So for many of you, that I haven't mentioned a lot, I've talked a little bit more about my kids, but here's something that people may not know about me is I actually studied abroad as a foreign exchange student in the Netherlands. So I grew up with 8 sisters and 2 brothers, and well, I think we'll start there. So between 8th and 9th grade, I decided to go study abroad in the Netherlands. And I tell you what, it was challenging. I lived with, my sister went with me, and we lived with a family there, a host family, and I had a great time. But when I was there, learning a different language, their school structure, their school system was quite a bit different. Their school system is a lot like college here in the U.S. where you test to be placed. So I had to do some testing. But in the Netherlands, most of them spoke English, so I didn't pick up the language very well. But for instance, in the Netherlands, I would ride a bike to and from school. I had some great rain gear. And sometimes it would take me 45 minutes to an hour just to get to school. But I would go to school after I tested, and I would be sometimes your equivalent to like a senior here in the U.S. I would have senior people in my class, but I took coding, which is pretty universal. I took music, pretty universal. I took English, obviously that was easy. But I had a lot of great things. But what I learned when I was there is I learned I could do hard things. And with my host family, I didn't really spend a lot of time with them. There was a kid that I found in high school, a friend of mine, and his dad and parents owned a local hotel chain, and they converted one of the whole floors into their house, which was pretty cool. So I'd go over there and dink around and stay over there most of the time because it was downtown. But I tell you, the culture was great. And one of the things I actually miss in the Netherlands is, if anybody's ever been there, a lot of those people have retail space, like a mom and pop pastry or mom and pop, sandwich shop, or they're just mom and pops. And they had these things where they would make like a cone out of fries and they would eat it with just mayo. To this day, I could never eat fries and just mayo, but that was like a treat for them. But I tell you, the other thing I really enjoyed is I love the pastries and love the candy and all of the stuff that they did downtown. I remember when it was St. Patrick's Day, we went down and they colored the river or one of the channels green, and then they had Santa Claus there and a bunch of people, just a big old party. And then I also loved the farmer markets. But the reason I point all that out is I went as a foreign exchange student, and I realized, having ADHD, undiagnosed, and some of my challenges with dyslexia, that I really struggled in school and I didn't like school. So after I came back from the Netherlands, I decided to graduate from school early, and I graduated from a junior. And that was a little bit of a challenge because a lot of my friends were graduating a year later. I graduated a year early, but I was still able to walk with my class the following year. So, but what I did is when I came back, I'm like, listen, what is it going to take just to get out of school? And my junior year was this. I went to school from 7 to 11:30. And I went there just for the required elective classes, and then I had work release for the rest of the day. And back then, I started a job as a shift manager at a local pizza place when I was 14. And I was able to work until 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And I did that all through my junior year. So basically, I would go to school, get my required elective so I could graduate early, and then I would go and work. And that allowed me to, back then, I liked cars. I bought a lot of different cars. I think in 2 years I went through 5 different cars. And I just, burn those cars up, use them, abuse them, blow the rotors off, whatever. But that's what I did. And from that, when I graduated early, when my buddies were going to high school, I was actually attending college. So before I ended up serving a church mission, I actually graduated with my associate's degree. So when I came back from my service mission, I didn't immediately go back into college. What I ended up doing is I dinked around. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I just played. And a good thing I did that, because that's how I found my wife. I was just messing around, going to dances, doing the thing. And then I met my wife. And then from getting married, I had to make a decision. Okay, now this got to get serious. I got a wife to support, eventually have kids to support. So I started the direction of going back to college. And I ended up getting my bachelor's degree a couple of years later in applied science. And then from there, I was able to get a job with a local design company designing homes. But what I realized is, with my degree in industrial design, you think about any products you look at, that's what it was. You design. A couple of my instructors used to work for GM. Another instructor worked for NASA. Designing the functionality and look of things that you see today, like a radio or a car interior. So that's what I went to school for. But I also had a background, an associate's degree in drafting and design. And that's what got me my job, my very first job. And I think my job at that time, I was making like $28,000 a year. I mean, that maybe, I don't even know if there's that, but I was making that. And what I realized shortly is, what if I wanted to get to the next level, it would require some sacrifice on my part, because I knew that wasn't the end game plan. Yes, I was a paycheck, but where would that job take me? So one day I found out they fired a superintendent, and I went into the production manager's office and said, hey, is there any other opportunities for me? And will you give me a shot as a superintendent? And I point this out because sometimes you got to go ask for things if you want something, because I'm not a mind reader. And so I went in there and said, is there a chance that I can be a superintendent? Because I knew they made more money and there was bonuses on the completion of houses. So he's like, let me think about it. That answer. And I'm like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Because I knew I was pretty much capped out at designing houses. In fact, I designed one of the houses my wife and I still own, the first one we built, and I've designed a bunch of other ones. But my point is, sometimes you got to tell people what you want, because they don't know any other way, right? And most people, if they can make it work, they will. So I asked him. About a month later, he came to me and said, hey, we'll give you a shot. So I went and trained with the superintendent. I had a background in construction growing up my entire life. My dad always had a second job, and whether it was framing a deck, plumbing, sheetrock, painting, trim, I was always there with my dad. Was I really good at it? I don't know. But I just did it with my dad. So I knew what it took to build a house, but I'd never been in charge of actually being in charge of subs to help build the house. So I went with the superintendent for about 60 days, 60, 90 days, and they trained me. Said, okay, well, you got to make sure this and this and this and this and this and this, all the steps to build a house. Traditionally, there's about 20 subs on a house, and it's all scheduling, because you can't put insulation until the framing's up and so on. But what I learned very quickly is, if I did my job right, I could build the house faster and quicker. The record in building a house was 28 days from start to finish. Now, we had to get some fast set concrete, or so that it cured really quickly. But 28 days in building a house from start to finish, because every year there was a parade of homes, and they would always press us to build it quicker, faster, with all the latest and greatest. And it always seems, with all the timelines, they would get a permit late, or they would change something late. And it was always navigating that, that build. But as a superintendent, I built hundreds of homes. I didn't build them personally, but I was in charge of it. I was in charge of the schedule. I was in charge of the subs getting there. But what I learned is that if I did my job as a scheduling, subs would be there on time. They would know me and trust me. And then they knew, because what a sub never wants to do is show up to a job and be told, you got to go somewhere else, or it's not ready. Because that's frustrating. Time is money, and they don't make money unless they get their job completed. So if I was holding them up, then it was on me. So I knew that if my schedule was tight, and even if I had to give a half a day or a delay or whatever, start in the morning, evening, whatever it was, I made sure my subs became, some of my subs that I had at that time are still good friends today, but they knew when they showed up to my job, it was ready. If not, they would get a call. In the beginning, I used to get all these calls from these companies saying, hey, is the job ready? And I said, I told you it was ready with the schedule. And because they didn't trust other companies, and they knew that if they showed up to my jobs, there were sometimes they'd call me and say, hey, can I get there a day early? I'd go to a sub and say, hey, I know you're scheduled for tomorrow. Is there any chance you'll be out of here today? Someone's looking for work. And I'd put the next sub in, because as a sub, they got to keep moving forward and continue to get jobs completed so they get paid. So it was that trickle effect. Well, over time, as being a superintendent, there were some changes in the company, and they let go of the project manager, and they said, hey, Ty, we'll give you a shot. So at that point, I went from designing and building houses to a superintendent to the boss of the entire construction side of the company, which required me to be in charge of development, like commercial, and in charge of other superintendents and all of the $33 million in revenue that I managed every year. I have built and seen thousands of homes built, subdivisions, and so on. But as you all know, if you've listened, because I've mentioned this before on the show, in 2007, 2008, the week before Thanksgiving, I was given my last paycheck and said, there's the door. And that's what started me on my journey looking for an opportunity. And as I was looking for an opportunity, that next year I did 17 different jobs, from Christmas lights, trims, to insulation, to deck, to framing, whatever I could do to make a paycheck. And I also then landed a job with one of my vendors selling vinyl fencing and deck. So, and that's vinyl fencing and deck led me to the guy that told me about the insurance opportunity. So in it was around June, May or June of 2009, a guy told me about, hey, you should get an insurance business. I looked into it and I started testing. I finally passed the test in October of 2009, and it took me 11 times to pass the test. And I tell people that because don't give up, right? I wouldn't be where I'm at today, or any of the people on my team, had I given up. And it was hard, because how many times I went in and took the test, I come out and it said 69. I'm like, 68, 69. And it was gut wrenching. And I have had other agents. My brother-in-law actually took it 8 times, and I told him, I said, listen, you don't have to do this. And he's like, no, he was determined that if I could do it, he could do it. And his story is a one for another day, or go listen to the podcast show on Michael Bernard on what he's been able to do. But I fought through the testing. I worked for a captive agency for a year, and then I found Ron Kellogg, and he really took a liking to me. And he used to tell me all the time, he said, Ty, people like you are hard to find. And I used to I'm just going to work. I'm just treating this like a 9-to-5 job. And I wasn't even really able to treat it like a 9-to-5 job, because for 5 years, I did it part-time. I would go and sell insurance on Saturday and Friday and Thursday, but I would do 20 fence bids before that. So this is what I knew. I was $1 million producer when it came to vinyl fencing and deck. And what I would do is, I knew that if I did 20 bids a week, that was between 80 and 100 a month, that I would hit $1 million a year. So I would pack my schedule from 6 to 9 at night, getting out as many bids as I could, and then following up in between, which would free me up to sell insurance, the other days of the week. Over time, those 5 years, I did less and less fence bidding, because then I built I built builder relationships where they were just giving me deals. And then it freed me up to do more time to sell insurance. I did this. I said, for those 5 years, I made a goal or a commitment to myself that I was going to double my income for 5 years, and which I did. And then in 2012, after I made sure that I was financially secure, I really started helping other agents do the same thing. In 2012, I decided to scale my agency, and my wife and I had a conversation, and I decided to go on the road for 2 years straight. I would leave on a Monday, I'd leave on a Sunday, I'd leave on a Saturday, and I'd always be home on the weekends. The one thing my wife told me, great wife, I love her to death, really has been a champion of mine for a lot of years, and always has been. But she would say, as long as you're home on the weekends, you can do whatever you want. And I would go to work. I mean, I'd fly to a market, I'd order leads. And back then we did a lot of direct mail. So I'd order leads. I'd do $2,000 or $3,000 in leads. I'd get 200-300 leads back. I would call the agent that I'd previously recruited in that market, say, hey, book our appointments from this time to this time. This is when I'll be there. Let's go to work. And then what I did after I left is any leads we weren't able to work or weren't able to close, I would give them to those agents to continue to work. And I repeated that process all over the country. And that's why now I operate in all 50 states. I've got agents all across the US, and things continue to grow and scale to that point. But some things that I learned is it was really difficult to go on the road. There was times I'm like, I do not want to get on this plane. I didn't want to go. And these thoughts crossed my mind like, you just need to call and tell the agents you can't come. Or you need to do this, or you need to come home early, or your kid's sick, or whatever. One of the things that was amazing, my wife would never tell me when something really went wrong until I got home, unless it was really bad. Like if the kids got in trouble at school, I really didn't hear about that till I got home. And later I asked her, I said, honey, why did you do that? She's like, I didn't want to bother you. Not that I was bothering you, but I needed you to focus because I wanted you to scale this as fast and as quick as you could so that we could do what we wanted to do together. But in building any business, it requires sacrifice in two ways. It's time or money. And I know you've heard this before, is you're paying to play. If you can't find, sometimes you're paying a lot of money to play. And it's time or money or both. Meaning, and I did both. I mean, there was times when I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this $3,000 that's on my credit card for the week because I'm leaving and the hotel expense and all of the meals that I bought for agents while I was there. I didn't necessarily know where the money was going to come from, but I knew that if I went to work and I did the action, the money would be there. And there was times I went out on the road and I'd go Monday, strike out, Tuesday, strike out, Wednesday, strike out, Thursday, strike out. And then we'd end up selling 20 deals on a Friday. And it was amazing to me that I would just apply and do the work. I've talked about this many times. If an agent is willing to listen, they're willing to listen, they're coachable, and they're willing to do action, whatever it is, they can be successful in this business. But it takes those three things. If they're willing, right, then you think it would result in action. But if they're taking action and they're not willing, it doesn't work. You've got to have all three of those components to be successful. Because there will be days when you're like, you're going to want to give up. There was days I was on the road driving in my car and I called it windshield time and I'm like, I got to do this again? Are you kidding me? And then all the negativity that came with it, they're like, I mean, your kids are at home. You know your wife's at home. You'd rather be home sleeping in your own bed. You'd rather be, doing something different. I mean, they were real, but you got to fight through them. You got to keep pushing. And now you fast forward, and now that I was able to be financially secure, and I guess you're never really financially secure, but I mean, my bills are covered and things are taken care of. But now I've been able to see that impact in other people's lives. From a stay-at-home mom, a kid that's 22, a guy that's 65 and getting ready to retire, realizing that his pension, his 401k is not going to be enough. And sitting down with them and coming up with a game plan that works for them to help them be financially free. Now, everybody's definition of wealth is a little bit different. My definition of wealth is that everyone's bills are paid before they get out of bed. I don't know what everyone's bills are, but whatever your bills are, whatever that is, that's a good starting point. And then okay, what do I really want to do? People have dreams that they want to build a restaurant or they want to build a care facility or they want to, whatever they want to do. They want to build a smoothie shop. I mean, these are all things that my agents have done. Or buy back the family farm or buy back the parents' house. These are all things that agents have been able to do by be financially free by building a business in the insurance space. They've been able to do those things. And with that, they're rewarded. They're able to get those families, their family legacy built and continuing to move forward. One of the most recent ones that I'm reminded of, because you just never know. I mean, I have people I interview all day, every day. I interview them. Is it a good fit? Am I a good fit? Can they do this? Do they want to do it? Can they get past the insurance test? Whatever it is. And as I sit and talk to them and I interview them, I always want to know what their why is, what's driving them. Is it just a paycheck? Because this industry just isn't a paycheck. It isn't a 9 to 5 job. What is it they want to build? Because that's what I want to help them build. And it's looking beyond the horizon. It's like, okay, the horizon's there, but there's stepping stones or steps to get to the horizon. It doesn't happen immediately. And I listened to a podcast show from a Navy SEAL, and he was going through training, and it resonated with me. He's like, I had an instructor that told me this. He's like, the first thing you do when you get out of bed in the morning is make your bed. And after you've made your bed, you do your meditation, you do your prayers, you take a moment for yourself before you get off and running. And he says, I knew that my day started at 4 a.m. And if it wasn't 4 a.m., it was before that. He knew that the day was going to consist of 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups, all these different requirements of the day. It was going to be a 5-mile run. I mean, those instructors push them to mental exhaustion. Or that was not even a word. To just absolutely exhaustion, right? They are pushing them to fail. And because he says in there that they ring the bell, right? They ring the bell. But as he said, my instructor said this, you make your bed, you say your prayers, knowing that at the end of the day, you can come home to a nice bed that's already been made. And he said the next fight was to get to breakfast. You knew when you got to breakfast, you'd have food to eat. Yeah, I've been up since 4 a.m., but my next fight was breakfast. And then after breakfast was lunch. And then after lunch was dinner. After dinner was more cardio and more reps, and then my bed. And then it started all over again. That really helped him, he said, in knowing that there was stepping stones to get to the end. He made it through, and he was very successful in his career. But he said it was those milestones on that trajectory or getting to the horizon that he was able to see by those small and simple things. Sometimes people want to be like, I need to do this now. I need to make $100,000 now. I need to make $200,000 now. And I've sat with people that came out of corporate America and they were making $250,000 a year and they lose their job for whatever reason or get pushed out. And they're like, I need to make this now. And I'm telling them, listen, that really isn't the reality. Is it possible? Absolutely. But it isn't reality. Are you willing to take the time and energy and effort and action to do it? Because it's there if you want it, but you're going to be working sun up to sundown, and it's possible, but are you willing to do that? And if you are, I want to match your energy. I want to mirror your energy. I want you to be as successful as you want to be. One thing I cannot do, and I've mentioned this many times, is I can't be the tugboat. I've got to be the lighthouse. And as people embrace the lighthouse, they can be successful and they can see where the end goal is. Just like navigating through rough waters, you've got to have that beacon of hope. You've got to have that mentor. And so over the last, how long's it been? We're almost 20 years and 2 more years. In 2 more years, since I got, 2003 years. In 3 more years, it'll be 20 years since I was forced out. And whether you're forced out of a position or whether it's a choice, you've got to start somewhere. The other thing I would mention, it's never too late. I've seen people that like, can I do this business? Sure you can. Because there's people that they will relate to that I won't. There's people that they will connect with that I won't. There's people that will listen to them that won't listen to me. There's people that will listen to me and not them. That's just the way we are as human beings. There's people that I'm sure that you meet all day, every day. You're like, I really like that person. There's just something about them. It's their energy. It's their soul. It's their, what they said. It's how they speak, right? And that's what you need to find. My journey is my journey. And my hope is this, that there's a takeaway or 1 or 2 or 3, knowing that you are important, that you are valuable, that you can do this. If it's not in the insurance space, make it whatever space it is. You want to go and create a restaurant, do it. You want to go and start a company of any kind, do it. I watched something else today. If you guys have ever seen me, I drink death water. You know what death water is? It's water in a can. It is water in a can. A guy took an idea and ran with it. Today, it's worth $1.4 billion. Water in a can. Now, over time, he evolved to some little bit of sweeteners, and I like this little lime drink. Coca-Cola or coffee, soda drinks are just too sugary for me, and occasionally I'll drink them. But for the most part, I just need a little bit of something other than just water. But that's a simple idea that he didn't give up and what he was able to turn it into. Now, one day, I'll be a $1.4 million industry, right? No, the industry is, but my agency as well. But I'm going to continue to build, and I'm always looking for team members that want to plug into the systems and strategies to help them be successful. If I leave you with this, like I do with all of my kids that I coach, is there's 4 things I always ask them at the beginning of practice. It is this: did you make your bed? Did you make your bed? It takes a few minutes to make your bed, knowing that you can come home and crawl in bed at the end of a hard day's work. Did you do your homework? And if you're not in school, I would say, did you do the things your mentor asked you to do? Did you do the check boxes? Did you do your steps if you're exercising? Did you do your sit-ups? Did you do those things? And holding yourself accountable. The next one is, were you respectful to others? Meaning your parents, your coaches, your friends, your siblings, your teachers. Were you respectful? Were you a good human? And the last one is, did you provide an act of service? Those are the things that I ask at the beginning of every single practice with these young boys that are 14 to 12 before they start practice. The idea is that I can teach them to be a better human being, that they can provide service. And you know what's so rewarding when we ask them and when I ask them what their act of service is? You know what? I gave somebody a piece of gum. I held the door for an elderly lady. Or I opened a car door for my mom. Or I cooked my mom breakfast. Guys, that's what this life is about. It's providing service. And if you're starting a business, provide the service. The money's a byproduct. I know you got to pay attention to the numbers. You got to pay attention to what's going in and what's coming out. But if you provide the service, you'll create the impact. People will be drawn to you, even if your price may be a little higher. I chose to do business, and this was always a battle when I was in the construction industry, with somebody that provided service that didn't nickel and dime me to death and not choosing the low bid. I prefer to choose the middle bid with somebody I knew, trust, and liked versus somebody that's going to come in and lowball me, and then all of a sudden want to nickel and dime me to death to get an extra $1 or $2. But it was a win-win, right? I made sure my jobs were on time. I made sure when they showed up, they could make money, and it was a win-win-win. Life to me is about providing service, and in every opportunity, making it a win-win. A win for you, a win for anyone you help. And as always, share, like, and subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.